Hello, good to be back. So, as you know, always the IT world never stops learning. So, every day you learn something new. So, in the past year or something, I've started to work with GraphQL. And you're probably wondering, what is GraphQL? Well, you may have heard of API because I know I made some videos about APIs and so on. But let me break down the core differences between GraphQL and REST API. And the core difference, if we're talking like that, GraphQL is a specification or a query language, while REST is an architectural concept for network-based software. Yes, but let me explain. So GraphQL right now is gaining momentum as a successor to REST API. However, it's not quite a replacement. And let's talk about REST API and GraphQL. So what is REST API? REST stands for Representational State Transfer, which is an architectural style that conforms to a set of constraints when developing web services. Okay, so is that too complicated? For example, let's say you have, a server somewhere and you wanna give your clients access to part of that server. How do you do that? Well, you can use a REST API. You can expose one endpoint for your clients, which can access only that type of data that they need. So they don't have access to your full server and everything you got there. You can expose whatever you need. So when a client calls REST API, the server transfers the resources in the standardized representation. In this case, the data format supported by REST API can include JSON, XML, YAML file. Well, it's not limited, let's just say. And of course, a REST request is made up of endpoint, HTTP method, header, body, and so on. And as an HTTP method, there are several like get, post, put, patch, delete, and so on, but you're not gonna use quite all of them. So let's get back to GraphQL. What is actually GraphQL? So GraphQL is an open source data query and manipulation language for APIs, which means a runtime for fulfilling queries with existing data. Okay, so I think I've went a little too technical, but I'm gonna explain. So why do we need GraphQL? Because we already had REST API. Why do we need GraphQL? So one of the most common limitation of REST out of the box is that of overfetching and underfetching. Well, this happens because the only way for a client to download data by hitting endpoints that return fixed data sets. It's very difficult to design an API in a way that is able to provide clients with exact data needs. So overfetching means getting more information than you need. For example, if the endpoint holds, let's say, data on burgers available at a restaurant, you'd hit the /burger endpoint, and instead of getting the names that you're interested in, you may get everything that endpoint has to offer, including price, ingredients, calories, and so on. With GraphQL, you can dictate what you want in that query. For example, you would put burgers and as a parameter name. So you only get the name for the burgers, which is much more faster, let's say. And also a common pattern with REST API is to structure the endpoints according to the views that you have inside your app. For example, /menu, /prices, /images, and so on. This is handy since it allows clients to get all the required information for a particular view by simply accessing the corresponding endpoint. The drawback of this approach is that it doesn't allow for rapid iterations. With every change you make to the UI, there's that risk data required than before. Consequences, the backend needs to adjust as well to factor in those new data needs, being counterproductive and slowing down the process of product development. And with the flexible nature of GraphQL, changes on the client side can be made without any extra work on the server. Since clients can specify their exact data requirements, no backend adjustment needs to be made when the design and data needs on the front end change. Is it clear? I think it is. So let's roll back and see the whole differences between them, because I've went a little technical, and let's see if you got the point. So the core differences between GraphQL and REST API is that GraphQL is a specification or query language, while REST is an architectural concept for the network software based. GraphQL is great for being strongly typed and self-documented based on schema types, descriptions, and integrates with code generator tools to reduce development time. When thinking of one of the most differentiations, the differences in expected responses for queries. Yeah, as I mentioned, the one with the burger. When you make a GET request with /burger in the REST API endpoint, you'll get everything about the burgers, because that's how usually those endpoints are created. While using a GraphQL, you can put the same endpoint and make that query with specific variables. What do you want from that burger? You only want the name, you want the price, and your GraphQL response is shaped and sized to be exactly how you describe it. Your response is exactly what you wanted. No more, no less, no different. Well, I think this sounds pretty good, right? And let's roll back and finish this up, because it's already been interesting enough, or technical enough, let's say. So GraphQL, on the one hand, it will be over here in the editing part, uses a client-driven architecture, while REST API uses a server-driven architecture. GraphQL lacks in building caching mechanism. REST API uses caching automatically. GraphQL has no API versioning required. REST API supports multiple API versions. GraphQL has the response output in JSON. REST API has the response output in XML, JSON, YML file, and so on. GraphQL allows for schema stitching and remove data fetching. REST simplifying work with multiple endpoints requires expensive custom middleware. So, which one should you choose? I don't know, honestly. Whatever works for your project and your team, let's say. But this is my take on the GraphQL versus REST API war. And although I'm new to the game, I mean, I think I have only a few months working with GraphQL, I like GraphQLs. And also there's a big, let's say, plus. You can test both of them with Postman, which is nice because I'm used to Postman testing APIs and so on. So happy testing.